Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About It. My name is Mark Nash and I'm your host. And today we have with us Noah Rattler. Noah Rattler is a wonderful guy who's very active in the community. And today we're just going to talk to him and find out what different projects he's working on. So, hey, Noah, how you doing? Say hello to everyone.
I'm good. Thanks for having me out, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, hey, we're happy to have you. So please get us up to date. You know, our audience wants to know, who are you? Where are you from? You know, how did you get involved in nonprofits? Just talk to us.
Well, my name's Noah Rattler, as Mark said. I'm a native Houstonian from the South Park neighborhood here in the city of Houston. I grew up there, and after leaving Sterling High School, I went out to Prairie View A&M University, where I studied mechanical engineering and physics. And during this time while I was growing up, I was taught, in a way, by my parents how to care for other people. Not in just my brothers and sisters, because there were four of us, not in a way to keep peace in the house, but in a way that helped us as individuals go out and try and make our communities better. And so as elementary school did Boy Scouts and other little programs, installing firefighters, planting trees out around the schools. Middle school, high school, joined more organizations because I was used to it by then, and this was kind of part of who I was. When I went off to Prairie View, I started to volunteer with different organizations and joined a fraternity, Rho Chi Psi Recruitment and Retention Organization. And during that time, I would go out with the organization and start talking at high schools and middle schools about the benefits of coming to the university. And because of the two majors that I picked and the degree plan that I was on, okay. I stayed at Prairie View for a little while, and eventually some of the high school students were there who I talked to were at Prairie View. And they told me that they came to Prairie View because of the talk that I did at their high school.
Oh, wow.
And that was like one of the first times where I really saw an impact from some of the things that I'd done. I mean, it's always good to understand that you're doing something for the right reasons, but it's also good to get some feedback from that. And so that was really cool. It was really cool, and it kind of helped reaffirm my desire to keep trying to make the community better in whatever form or fashion that I could.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, now, for you said mechanical engineering degree in physics?
Yes.
And from there to move into doing volunteer work, I mean, where's the connection? Was it just the high schools? Is that what the connection was?
Well, it was I've actually been more into the community longer than I've been studying engineering and physics.
Okay.
It started off, like I said, back in Boy Scouts when I was young. And just from watching my parents, growing up in a house that we grew up in, it was not a random occasion to have someone staying with us who needed a place to stay. And so my parents were always really caring people. They would give what they could when they could. And that was a really big example. I took that to heart. Subconsciously, it just kind of became a part of me. And that's who I am. That's a big part of who I am. So mechanical engineering and physics, even though science has been a love of mine, it's also a part of who I am. It's not the all of who I am. There's this other big portion of me, which is this humanitarian, activist type individual. This individual who believes that the world can be a better place if we try, if we make the conscious effort to make it a better place. And they actually do kind of come in handy together sometimes. If you look at, an individual told me once before that a good way to judge how close something is to the truth is to look at it in its native arena and then take it out of that situation and put it somewhere else. And if it still rings true, then you can bet that little saying or quote or whatever is pretty close to being true. And I started to think about that, and I had come across it before, but at that time I think I was maybe catching the bus back and forth to Prairie View for school, and I was thinking about Newton's laws, and one of his laws states that a force, object in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by some intervening force. And I started thinking about that. Well, people act the same way.
Right.
Our habits, our behaviors are like a motion, a kinetic energy that we have based on the things that we developed in our past. And they'll stay that. We'll stay that way. We'll maintain that course of action. We'll maintain those habits. until we're motivated to change by something that's exterior to us or some interior motivation. But there'll be something that's outside of the system of us in the habit, us in the behavior, that will have to come in and make us change our behavior. Generally, if people are comfortable doing what they're doing, they're going to stay that way.
Right.
And so an outside force has to intervene, just like in Newton's laws. And then I start to look at it differently. Okay, this social side of the world could be looked at through the lens of physics and engineering, because at least mechanical engineering and physics, they both talk about motion, and a lot of, especially engineering, is systems analysis. Looking at something, you have these interacting parts, and you want to figure out what's going on in there. You have to put a boundary around it and contain it. Figure out a way, a reference point from which you're going to judge the actions going on in these interactions. And so when you do that, you create a system. And when you know what's going in and coming out of the system, you can kind of start to evaluate how it's working, with the, what's making it work well, what's making it work bad, what's hindering the efficiency of that system. And you look at our society is the system itself. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things coming into the system, into society, and a lot of things coming out of it. We have a lot of products. We have things like VCRs, pollution, the space program, bioengineered food, organic foods, holistic medicine, cures for different diseases that existed and are almost wiped out by now, and new diseases that pop up due to different parts of the human condition. And so all of these things are part of the system that we are. And I figured if we started to, at least if I started to look at it through that lens, I'd be able to start to find some solutions to some of the problems that we have. And that's how I wound up eventually getting onto homelessness, how I wound up looking at it. Because once I started volunteering in 2005, after I finished my first degree at Search Homeless Services, what I would do is ride on the van, the mobile outreach van. We'd go out to the community and take food and blankets and mosquito spray or whatever is needed for the people, the people who would be living out there on the street. And the purpose of it was not to just give out food or give out blankets. The purpose of it was to build relationships with our brothers and sisters who are out there. And a lot of times there'd be case managers out there with us, and most of the time it was permanent staff with Search. They'd be out there and following up on clients and people that they were working with, trying to make sure everyone had what they needed. But that weekly act of going out several times a week and bringing food and blankets and just checking on people will help build up trust. And trust is what's needed to have a strong foundation and support system. And so that's how I started. That's how I got into the homeless arena. And once I started doing it, I started to understand how complex it was. Once you look at, if you look at the homeless population, if you stand out far away from it, it looks like a homogeneous group. It looks like it's pretty.
Just you're mentally disabled and
veteran, right? Oh, the guy panhandling who looks like he's crazy.
Yeah, the crazy people.
That's what you think. That's the stereotype. That's what I thought. That's what a lot of people think, because we don't look as deeply into it as we could. But the closer you get to it, the closer and closer and closer, you realize that the fastest growing group of homeless people are women. You start to understand that 40% of the homeless population are children. Out of 3.5 million homeless people in the United States, 40% of those are children, almost half. One of the startling statistics was 49% of the homeless population was African American.
Oh, wow.
Well, we're 12, 13% of the population, the general population. And other things just made me see that it was much more complex, and it was more of a system than a unilateral thing. It was more heterogeneous than homogeneous. And so with the systems analysis mind frame, I started to look at homelessness and the population as one of the outputs of our society. You have all these things that go into our collective experience, and some people get lost in the system. Some people get pushed out of the system, and for different reasons, be it health care, the criminal justice system, inadequacies in the educational system, or just having a support system that breeds the mentality that's needed to survive in the society.
Right.
And a lot, or tragedy. Often it is a mental illness, especially post-traumatic stress. Not necessarily due to war, but just life.
Right.
Traumatic things happen all the time to good people.
Right.
And without having the tools and the resources that are needed to recover from those things, it's hard to get back from it.
Right, right. I agree.
It's hard to get back from it. And so it's a systemic problem. And for the solutions to come about, we have to look at it from a system standpoint, not just the individual.
Okay.
Every person who's homeless, who winds up off the street, has to make an individual decision, and they need a support system that is tailored to their individual needs. Mm-hmm. But to end homelessness is a systemic problem.
Okay,
and the solutions would be systemic. Go ahead.
Yeah, but what do you say to people who say that homelessness has been on the planet since the beginning of time and it's never going to go away?
Homelessness has been on the planet since the beginning of time. The word is somewhat of a misnomer.
Okay.
Because technically someone's homeless if they wind up standing on someone's couch. You have somewhere to go. Mm-hmm. People who move back in with their parents. I've done it.
Right.
So I was technically homeless. And so it's a very broad scope when you say the word homeless. The ultimate issue, I believe, is really the chronically homeless, because those individuals who've been out there for 6 months, 3 years and up.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with mental illness, and it's really tough. It's we don't have solutions to some of these problems. Drugs are not the solution, and even a lot of people are really going to hate me when I say this.
Please.
But the housing first movement, it's a big movement of homeless service providers to do housing first, and that helps with people who have the mental capacity to function with little assistance. But for those who don't have it, the mental illness is still the crowning reason for that portion of the population.
Okay.
While they're homeless, you build a place for them to stay, they'll still wind up outside. And then eventually it goes into some people choose to stay out there. It's a very small percentage of the population who wants to be homeless, because it's not an easy life. But there are people who do not want to live the way that society is structured. They don't want to follow the rules, or they want to deal with the bills or things like that, and some people just want to be free of it. And so they choose to live out on the streets. And so that small population will probably always be there. No matter what the society looks like, there's always going to be someone who doesn't agree with it, or for some reason decides to go a different way.
Right.
And that's their choice.
Okay.
Someone who makes that choice. This is a free country. That's what we're about. The freedom to live our lives the way we want to live, as long as they don't interfere too much with everyone else's right to be free.
Right.
The mental illness we are going to have to do better about that. And there's a lot being done, but it's just a real tough cookie to crack. It's a real tough. It's a big issue. It's really complicated, and oftentimes they say the human brain is the final frontier. And it's going to be a while. If we can get past that, we may be able to bring an end to the suffering of the chronically homeless.
Okay. So
who are suffering due to mental illness.
So we're trying to end suffering of the chronically homeless, or we're trying to house everybody?
Depends on who you're talking to.
Okay, so
my personal thing, I'm about easing suffering.
Okay.
Housing everyone is. You can have a house and still have problems.
Right.
So it's not even, I'm not specifically focused on homelessness as it is. It's really about easing the suffering and making our general experience of life better.
Okay.
And that's from the top to the bottom. On the bottom you have the homeless population. On the top, you have individuals who have really nice jobs, high six-figure salaries, but they aren't fulfilled inside.
Right.
Because they're chasing after the Joneses, even though they are the Joneses, and they don't understand that it's often really easy to become a captive to the lifestyle, right. And that does not breed happiness or fulfillment. And so those two individuals, the person at the top of the society and the person at the bottom, are both suffering. Mm-hmm. Their situations are different. The one at the bottom, their immediate surroundings their needs are probably more than likely much more immediate. And so that's where the focus is now.
And so is it more of a spiritual focus? Because those sound more like spiritual issues if the person at the bottom and the person at the top are both unfulfilled.
Well, it's kind of you can't treat one part of the person without treating all of them, I believe. A lot of this is going to take holistic solutions, and that's going to take treatment for the whole person.
Okay.
You can't just feed somebody and not deal with the habits they may have. So you can't just treat the addiction problem when they don't have anywhere to stay. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get a job if you don't have an address.
Right, and I've actually known somebody who actually experienced that exact situation.
Right. You lose your ID. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things you can't do if you lose your ID. You get in trouble as a teenager, and you wind up with something on your record that lasts for a long time, or even a young adult.
Right.
You find the error of your ways, but you still have this on your record, and you can't get an apartment anywhere.
Right.
Because they do background checks, and you can't. Where do you live? You can't get an apartment. You can't get a nice job. It's hard to get a job. You can't do all of this, but it's really the obstacles are much larger in that situation. Right. And for someone who is willing to do the work and has done the work to reform and rehabilitate themselves, refocus their direction, those obstacles are still out there. Okay. And so it's not just spiritual. It's not just the immediate needs of putting food in the stomach. It's kind of all of it.
Okay. So what do you say to people who are like, this, I don't want to call it a crusade, but this project is more of like the different categories of like the war on poverty. I mean, there's always going to be impoverished people, or the war on anything crazy, the war on obesity, the war on people who like pencils, mm-hmm. the war on people who like chicken. You know, any theoretical practice out there that can never be resolved. What do you say to those people when it comes to homeless? As in, do we throw our hands up and say forget about it, or we take the holistic approach and start doing something about it?
You just pretty much answered it. It's like, so do we quit because it's hard? It seems hard. Does that mean we don't do it? If a dog bites you on your leg and it's hard for you to get him off, do you quit trying to get him off?
Okay.
See, that's a much more immediate issue. The pain is personal then.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's not personal. Well, you can close your door to someone who's homeless on the streets. That's not when you wind up on the other side of that door, which a lot of people never predict that. Homelessness can strike anyone at any time. With the economy the way it is, anything can happen.
Right.
A traumatic event could happen to someone in your life, or a close relative die, and you may not recover from that as well as you think you would.
Right.
Loss of a job. Several things. It happens. The stories are as diverse as the American population, and we have a pretty diverse population. And so it's hard to predict what will happen in the future.
Right.
And so to negate the need of someone because it's not immediately hurting you is kind of short-sighted. In a way, it's almost a selfish thing that I'm doing, because I would like, if I were in the situation where I stay outside on the street, where I had to live on the streets, I would hope there was somebody out there trying to motivate other people to change the environmental situation that allows me to stay out there. And that's what it's about. I think ultimately the way I look at it, Mark, is when at the end of the day you go to sleep, and the next day you wake up, and you can choose to go left, or you can choose to go right. I choose to go in a direction that will benefit the most amount of people as I can.
Okay.
As long as I can do it. I mean, it may not be feasible for the rest of my life, but like right now, I had the opportunity to do it, and I'm doing what I can.
Okay. Well, I guess the thing that I look at is, there's an old saying: if you give a person a piece of fish, they'll eat for a day. If you teach them how to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime.
Exactly.
So when we're looking at the homeless situation, I guess the question would be, you mentioned holistic. What is your action plan for attacking it from both sides? Meaning, how are you not only putting people in homes or easing their suffering while they're in homeless? How are you guys, or you or whatever organizations you're a part of, how are you teaching them the skills necessary to get jobs or to overcome their situations? Or is it just, let's put them in a house?
As long as there have been homeless people, there have been people getting people off the streets. There's no magic in there.
Okay.
Basically, this is what has to happen. A person has to decide that I want to get off the street, and they have to be willing to do the work. There are dozens of organizations all across the country that have experts, and once a person makes that decision and say, I'm ready, then they'll get off the streets if they're determined enough. There's nothing, there's another old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right. The
individual has to be willing to do what it takes to get off the street. There's nothing you can do to make them get off the streets.
Okay.
And so, and that's not even among the experts. That's totally understood. When I say holistic, as far as this goes, I mean a big portion of it is making a conscious effort to do stuff to stop people from becoming homeless. Not even just focusing on it, but like if more people went and mentored children in schools who need mentors, they would do a lot to change the direction of their lives. It's understood that test grades in math and science in the 3rd grade are a really good predictor on how someone is going to succeed through the rest of their matriculation. How many prisons are going to be built? Exactly. Interference by people who have made it in that time period could change that direction. The more people go to prison, the more people wind up homeless.
Right.
It's just one thing. And it's really a lot of those little things. Reaching out to your community and doing things that benefit people who aren't homeless will stop and help decrease the homeless population. Because the people who like Search or Bread of Life or the My Fellow Man Alliance, they're out there getting people off the streets right now, like today. All of them. Search serves over 10,000 people a year, and they get people off the streets. That's what they do. They're experts at it. They're on the front lines doing that.
Okay.
But if the society is putting more people on the street than their capacity to pull off, then the problem gets bigger.
Okay.
And so my ultimate goal is to start to change the environmental impetus that creates those situations that allow people to be homeless, and that helps that environment is changed by a change in our mentality.
Okay.
As a people, the mentality that we should be going towards is the mentality that we're actually moving away from, and that is, I am my brother's keeper. I look out for my neighbor. It's pretty simple. I look out for my neighbor, and once everyone starts to do this. If I have your back, and you got the person's back next to them, and they got my back, everybody's back is watched.
Okay, except for the last guy.
No, see, that's what I'm saying. It's 3 of us. They watching mine.
Oh, so we watch
we're watching exactly.
Okay.
All of our backs are watched. But if all of us are watching our own back, then I won't know. Somebody get the best of you, I won't know. I'm too busy watching my back, and it's just me and this other person standing there, don't know what the situation is. If we're looking out for each other, that's unity that builds the strength in numbers. But if we're all, we can have a huge crowd of people, 100,000 people standing in the same space, and they're out for self, that's not a group. Right. That's not a unit. That's not a team. That's not an army. It's not a squad. It's just a bunch of individuals standing there.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, though. So when we're looking at the society as a whole, do you think it's an issue with selfishness, meaning that everybody just has their own back, or that people are working a bazillion hours and don't have time to watch anybody else's back but their own?
I don't think both of those. I don't think those are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
They're the same thing. It's we're forced. It's like the stress of society. It's kind of forcing everyone to turn inward. Okay. And it's happening before our eyes, and we're working too hard to pay attention to it. I'm not saying stop working.
Right.
I'm not saying stop paying your bills. I'm not saying stop taking your kids, giving your kids fine things. I'm just saying I'm trying to bring attention to it. Just think about it. That's all I want people to do is think about it. And that's where my whole awareness campaign came in. When in 2007, I walked from Houston to Los Angeles to raise awareness for homelessness. And it was 1,800 miles. 4.5 months. I started in the spring and walked right through the Mojave Desert in the summertime. And it wasn't about, I wasn't trying to be homeless. I wasn't trying to say that homelessness will end if I keep walking. I wanted people to think about it just a little bit more. Because ultimately I believe in all of our hearts, we're very caring and compassionate if we have the time. We just take the time to think about stuff. And sometimes you need to shock and awe was kind of my thing during this time period. The insanity of somebody walking across the country is enough to stop people from what they're doing. And they at least listen. Why are you doing that? Are you crazy?
Right.
Do you think you're Forrest Gump?
Yeah. You read my
most popular
Forrest Gump thing.
Right. And during that time, they stop everything they're doing, and I have their utmost attention.
Cool.
And I say, you know what? Man, there's a lot of people out here homeless. Most of them don't want to be homeless. Most of them are suffering. Think about it. And when I talked about that, all across the country, almost a quarter of the people that I talked to had experienced at one point in time in their life, for a couple of weeks or more at least. Mm-hmm. They had different varying opinions, but most of the people I talked to had personally been homeless. And around half the people I talked to, if not 3/4, knew someone really close to them who was homeless.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a bigger problem than we acknowledge. Mm-hmm. It's a bigger situation than we acknowledge. But the solution is there. If it's a problem, there's probably a solution to it.
Right.
And I just think we just need to think about it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. While you're drinking your coffee in the morning, think about, man, every now and then, I'm inside drinking this coffee. I just got out of my bed. Mm-hmm. There's a guy right now who's bumming some change for some coffee, and he slept outside on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. It's 40 degrees outside, and it's raining. Right. And he slept out there under a sheet with no shoes on, in a T-shirt.
Oh, wow.
That's the life that people live. And then just think about it every now and then. I think if we think about that a little bit more, it would automatically change our actions. Because the more we think about it, we're all compassionate. Mm-hmm. And more likely we'll be to do something. Everyone doesn't have to go out there and pull people out and make people live with you.
Right.
Support the people who are already doing the work. Send them a check once a year. Go volunteer a couple of hours every couple of months.
Cool. You just read my mind, because that's what I was about to ask. If we had to state specifically what the problem was, the problem would be chronically homeless people and their suffering. Is that a good... what is the direct problem, I guess, is the statement?
The problem is much more obscure than the evidence that you see right here.
Okay.
I think the actual problem is a purveyance of apathy and fear in our society. Now, without that, I don't want to sound...
Oh, no, please, spit it out. That's why we're here. Let's talk about it. That's the name of the show. Let's talk about it.
Mark, you're going to do an Oprah. Have me crying up here. No, I'm not going to cry now, but it's like... these are real world problems.
Okay.
The solutions are real world, but they don't necessarily thought of as real world.
Okay.
It's ultimately, I think it's really the fact that we don't love each other like we could.
Okay.
And that's at the root of it because we're afraid to.
Okay.
We're afraid to because we have to work so much. It's harder and more expensive to be able to feed oneself and one's family than it's been before. And so it's new to this society, this level of stress and everything else, and that kind of pulls us in and makes us more selfish and a little bit more short-sighted.
Okay.
But the solutions of the problems are not in the immediate future and right in our circle all the time. The solutions of the problems that will affect us may have to have us raise our eyes up off of our feet instead of just looking at where our next foot is going to fall, looking at where the next person's next to your feet are going to fall. And reaching back and saying, there's a bump in this road. I passed this bump in the road. Little kid in 3rd grade who's doing bad in math, you're going to come up on this bump, and this is how you get over it.
Okay.
That type of thing. Because the kid, he can be walking around watching his feet step by step by step, and he hits the bump, and he never recovers from it. He winds up in prison or homeless.
Right.
Or worse. And so that's the kind of thing that's the ultimate solution. But
well, I guess go ahead.
Steps, what people can do.
Bam, that's what
people can do. You can donate of your talent, your time, and your treasures to organizations that are doing things to help the problems. And my biggest issue is educating oneself.
Okay.
Get out there and find out what's going on. If you have a thing for people who are suffering from depression, support an organization that deals with that. There's an organization out there trying to fight every problem in our society. If human trafficking is one of your big pet peeves, which I think it should be because it is slavery as it's always been.
Right.
And I think a lot more people should be paying attention to this. Get out there and find some organizations that are dealing with it. Water crisis, pollution. If you don't like campaign finance and you want reform for campaign finance, find an organization that deals with that and be active in it.
Okay.
Life is really busy, but educate yourself on it, and when you can, there's always a little bit of time. There's always a little bit of time you can give. If you don't give any time, 2 more hours a year would benefit that organization by that two extra hours of your time.
Okay, cool.
That's how change happens. It's a contact sport.
Right. Yeah, I remember you posting that on Facebook. But yeah, you hit it right on the nail because what I was looking at was there's one thing to, I love the name of the show, Let's Talk About It, because we're promoting dialogue.
Right.
But at the same time, I've always been a person that said, let's not talk about problems without offering solutions.
Exactly.
And so I think that's excellent that you said, hey, the biggest thing is that we're not loving each other enough. And then just giving some examples of things that people can do in order to increase the love in the universe. I think that's a wonderful thing.
It works, man. And ultimately, is what we're afraid of. If we could let go of some of those hours at the job or something like that, some of that stress, people will find more time. In a recession, there are more people following their dreams than there was before the recession.
Right.
Because they don't have a choice. They have all this free time on their hands.
Right.
That is what makes our collective experience better. Each of us being who we are and contributing that to the collective experience. It makes it a much richer experience, and solutions come out of non-traditional places, solutions to these problems. So I think it's a lot we can do.
Okay, and I like the fact that you focus on the holistic component, because I think when we're looking at just some of the different organizations, I know you're involved with a couple of different organizations. Right. Can you just name the top, 3 that you're involved in, and just tell us more about that organization? I know you mentioned Search. Tell us more about that organization.
Well, Search is a place over on Fannin McGowan. I was a volunteer with Search for several years. It's a 4-story building. You've probably seen it and didn't know what it is. It's if you're interested in learning more about homelessness, it's a really good place to start. Okay. As far as a couple of other organizations I'm a part of, they're really result-oriented organizations. There's an organization called WOO. It's Women Healing and Empowering Women. I was on the board of directors for a couple of years, and now I'm on the advisory board. And the organization focuses on recidivism, homelessness and domestic violence as it affects women in communities of color. African American and Latino women are the fastest growing group of homeless and the prison population.
Oh, wow.
Domestic violence is large in these communities. Sexual abuse, physical abuse is rampant in these communities, and we don't have a dialogue set up to discuss these things. And that's where a lot of the healing is going to come, from us being able to talk about this stuff. But it's so painful, we hide it, and it just continues from generation to generation. I'm a member of INSERT, Inner City Emergency Response Team, which is an organization that is designed to help communities, different communities, prepare themselves for disasters. Because after Hurricane Ike, the whole city was shut down, and it may have been a point in time between the wind stopping and before the fire department can get there.
Right.
And so what INSERT is about doing is training the people in the community how to respond themselves until the fire department gets there, or until FEMA comes, or until the police department shows up.
Right.
So someone will know what to do. Instead of everyone being there just suffering and being victims, we'll be more proactive. And the biggest initiative that I'm working on right now is Houston Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. Okay. It's a week worth of events that is pretty much patterned after National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week by the National Coalition for the Homeless. And it happens from November 14th through November 20th. It's actually going to start the night before the 13th with Sleep Out Saturday, November 13th. And at the end of Sleep Out Saturday, so that'll be the kickoff for the week of several events that are going to focus on different parts of education, for the most part, educating people about homelessness and hunger and how the solutions, the organizations, we're going to highlight a different organization every day. And these organizations are ones who are out there making a difference, pulling people out the street, getting food into hungry people's mouths. That's what these organizations are doing. And so you can go to hhhaw.us. That's hhhaw.us. U.S. not as in the United States, but as in us, because we have to do this stuff together. This is something that we're all facing, and we're all a part of the solution. We have to do this together. So it's hhhaw.us, Houston Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. .us, and you get updates. You can sign up for Sleep Out Saturday there. I hope that every church, mosque, synagogue, civic group, professional organization, high school, university, fraternity, sorority, everyone sign up for the Sleep Out, because on the 13th we're trying to get the largest number of people sleeping outside as possible. There are over 13,000, 14,000 homeless people in the city of Houston. And I think if we can get 13,000, 14,000 people who are not homeless to sleep out, it'll be a sign of solidarity. In a way, more people will learn just a little bit about homelessness, and it will be a really big statement declaring that we care. And homelessness will be there the next day. But there'll be 13,000 more people who are going to write a check during the next year, or go volunteer an hour or so, or go mentor a student, or go and work on campaign finance reform,
right,
and commit themselves to doing something that makes our collective experience better.
Cool. That's wonderful.
Thank you. That's what's going on, Mark.
Wow, man, that's amazing that you're involved with so much, and I hope that the events coming up are going to be successful.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, cool. Is there anything else you want to leave our audience with before we leave?
You can go to, if you want to contact me, you can go to noahrattler.com, send me an email, and I'll get back with you. Join me on Facebook, MySpace, I'm on all these things. All of my organizations, WOO, INSERT, Houston Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week, they're all on all of the multimedia social networks. My partnering organization with the Houston Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week is the My Fellow Man Alliance. They're a really good organization. Check them out. They're on Facebook and everything else. Get in contact with us. Go to hhhaw.us and sign up. Start a team. Tell your friends about it. Go to church, get everybody started to participate, because this is where change happens. It happens right. If you're not sweating, you're not a part of it. You're a spectator. And change is not a spectator sport.
Contact sport.
It's a contact sport. You got to get in the game. Get off the bench, get in the game, and make it happen.
All right, thanks again. All right, well, thanks again for joining us on Let's Talk About It, and we'll see you at the next episode. Have a great evening.